Hi, welcome. I'm going to give it a few minutes to let all of our folks join. Okay, wonderful. Looks like people are logging in and getting settled, hopefully. Give it a couple more minutes. When I see numbers level out, I'll start in earnest. Okay. All right, well, let's go ahead and get started. My name is Katelyn Reed. I'm one of the directors with the board of directors for Selective Mutism Association. And so our webinar today is brought to you by the Selective Mutism Association. And we're so grateful to the Gordon and Marilyn Macklin Foundation because of their generous grant, we're able to do this webinar and others like it. I wanted to offer a couple of reminders before we get into the presentation tonight, which is our Hear Our Voices panel. In terms of reminders, I wanted to remind everybody that this webinar is recorded and we will post it on the YouTube channel for the Selective Mutism Association. And for those of you who are watching live or previously registered, we will send you the link to this recording this weekend, early next week, something like that within the next few days. We do have another webinar. SMA has one coming up here later this month. This one also has continuing education credits for those who are eligible. That webinar's title is Beyond Talking, Targeting Exposures for Bathroom and Eating. And that will take place on Tuesday, June 21st at 3 p.m. Eastern. And we're gonna go ahead and put the registration link in the chat. So thanks, Kristen, for that. Speaking of the chat, obviously today's panel is a question format. So we have requested that some questions be submitted in advance. If you follow any of our social media platforms, you might have seen those requests. So we do have a list of questions to get us started tonight, but please also feel free to post questions in the chat throughout the presentation. If you'd like to remain anonymous, you can certainly do so too. You can click send anonymously before sending your question in. And as a kind thank you in advance, I'm going to be both having this dialogue with our panelists and monitoring the Q&A. So please be patient with me if I don't see your question or combine questions, all of those types of things. And I think those are my housekeeping notes. So let's go into the panel. So this is the Hear Our Voices panel. As I mentioned before, this is one of our favorite events from our annual conference. And we have an awesome panel here tonight of individuals who have overcome selective mutism. We've got Anderson, Leanna, and Ella, and they're here to share their stories with you and hopefully in this process both inspire you and help you if you're in the thick of it still, right? Whether you're someone with selective mutism or a caregiver or an educator for someone with selective mutism. We're just really grateful for them to be willing to share their stories and to answer your questions. So I will give them each a quick minute to introduce themselves and share a brief story about themselves, and then I'll go ahead and open it up for questions then. So Ella, do you want to go first?
Sure, I'll go first. So I'm Ella. I am currently a senior in high school, and I had selective mutism growing up in, I would say, kindergarten and first grade. But so I've been having like therapy since I was 6 years old. I just recently stopped. So yeah, that's a little bit about me. Yeah. And if anyone wants to ask any more specific questions, you're welcome to. I like to play guitar, so that's just an interesting fact about me. And I also play soccer. So yeah.
Awesome. Thanks. Leanna, do you want to go next? Oh, we can't hear you. Oh no. We'll skip you. We'll come back to you. If you could play with your audio in the meantime, that would. Oh, there we go. Now we can hear you.
Now? Okay.
Yes.
My name is Leanna. I'm 21 years old. When I was 5, I was diagnosed with selective mutism. Before I was diagnosed, my parents thought I had Asperger's. And so after I got the diagnosis, I was in therapy from age 7 to 11. And I still have some social anxiety from selective mutism. And I think the one thing that helped me overcome SM the most was having a fresh start, which was when I went into high school, my freshman year, because there were so many people that didn't know me. And I think the one thing that held me back the most from talking was just how people who did know me back then would react to me talking. Because I think, at least for me, if someone heard me talk, they would make a big deal out of it. And then I'd get like embarrassed and then not want to talk. So.
Yeah. Thanks, Leanna. Anderson, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I'm Anderson Tapborn, and I'm 12 years old. I'm going to be in 7th grade at Homer Junior High, and I live in the suburbs of Chicago, Illinois. When I was in preschool, I couldn't talk, and I feel like my lips are sealed shut. When my teacher asked if I had to go to the bathroom, I couldn't really answer. My teacher sometimes said I had to answer instead of nodding my head, but I still couldn't talk and made me feel sad. In kindergarten, I began to whisper to my teacher, but I still couldn't talk out loud or to the class. And in kindergarten, my teacher told my mom to research SM. And during 1st grade, I went to CMI or Child Mind Institute and practiced brave talking. I even ordered a frozen hot chocolate to a waiter at Serendipity restaurant. This was something I'd never done before. I felt really proud that I talked to so many people, and I went back to CMI 3 more times for Brave Buddies Camp, and I learned lots of prizes for practicing brave talking. When I went back to school, I practiced with my teachers and parents, and now I'm entering 7th grade, and I can talk to all my classmates, and I can even ask for help if I need it. I played on a soccer team, played solo piano recitals, auditioned for a play, and I'm even going to a theater camp this summer. Most people I meet now wouldn't know that I had SM before, and I'm grateful my parents researched SM when I went to CMI for help. I'd also like to thank Dr. Bussman and Dr. Volpe, who might be here today.
Wonderful. And I love how specific your remembering of that restaurant that you went to. I bet it was a really important moment. So yeah, thanks for sharing, everybody. All right, so let's go ahead and start with some of the questions. Again, I'll start from those which were already submitted via our social media channels. This is a good reminder, if you don't already, to follow us on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter. Of course, that is where we post information about our webinars and stay connected with this community. All right, so in terms of questions, first one here, did any of you all feel like you ever had selective mutism symptoms come back after feeling like you sort of had mastered it, you'd overcome it, and here they are again?
I mean, I feel like most people with SM do develop social anxiety, so I still had not really trouble speaking in public places, but I'd still be anxious about it, like I would be when I had SM. And I know still in high school, presentations, I'd either take a video of or I just do in front of the teacher because I still wasn't comfortable with public speaking.
It's bigger goals.
Yeah.
Sometimes still felt challenging. Yeah.
I only in situations where I had a lot of people, where a lot of people would be nervous, I feel like. The first day of school or something.
Got it. Yeah.
I feel like I still struggled with a lot of social anxiety. But interestingly, I developed, after selective mutism, I developed OCD. So I also had to overcome that as well. So I think they kind of go together. Yeah. So.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing sort of collectively is this was not like a one and done sort of situation. It's something you're still working on at various times. Okay, so questions here. I think these two are sort of related. So broadly, what was your treatment experience like if you had treatment? And it sounded like everybody on this call did. And then sort of secondly to that, was medication helpful for you? Was it something you considered? Is it something that you utilized?
So I was on medication for a very short period of time. I think I was in 4th or 5th grade, and it would disrupt my sleep. So I kind of just stopped taking it cold turkey. And then therapy helped a lot. In school, I do fade-ins, which I don't know if everyone does those, but it's basically where me and my mom would be at school playing a game, and then my teacher would just keep backing up closer to us. And then the purpose of it was to be able to talk to them. But I think therapy helped a lot, and then going to high school and just kind of getting that fresh start.
Yeah, makes sense. And yes, so the strategy that Leanne is referencing is fading in or stimulus fading, sliding in, lots of different names meaning essentially the same thing, that we have someone that an individual with SM is comfortable talking with, they get a conversation going, they get in an activity, and then we sort of slowly edge in that new person. And hopefully we do it in a way that's nice and slow and steady and never feels overwhelming. So yeah, fading in. Wonderful. Yeah.
I did an intensive and 3 brave buddy camps at the Child Mind Institute. It taught me like skills for brave talking so that I could come home and practice at school. And the medicine helped too.
Can I pick into that a little bit more?
Sure.
What about medicine helped? Like how did you notice a change? And if so, how quickly?
It gradually made it easier. I feel like if you had medicine and help, then it makes it a lot easier.
Okay.
But it's
And
still
yeah, and Elle is nodding, so I'm thinking you're in agreement here.
I am, yeah. I've been on several different medications. I started with fluoxetine at like the age of 6. At first, they gave me too much, so my parents like noticed that I would be, I wasn't really having much anxiety. I think a funny story is I was hiking, and I think I was with my dog, and then there was a snake that came across, and I just wasn't phased at all. I was like walking near the cliffs, and they were like, Ella, something's a little off here, I think. So I had to get that checked out. I lowered the dosage, and it's just changed over the years. Sometimes medicine starts to not work as well. So I kind of transitioned off of that because I had been on it for a while, and then I'm on it again. So it's working well for me. But I would say more than anything, therapy has been like something that's really helped me. And just having a supportive family whose like job is to push you, be patient, and then also just having good relationships in your life, there to, encourage you to do what you love to do, whether that's performing. Yeah, so it's been definitely like a long process, a lot of exposures, a lot of doing just like what you're very uncomfortable with doing, but that's kind of what's necessary to overcome a lot of your fears. So
Yeah, that's a really great way to describe exposure therapy, right? Is it's uncomfortable and you do it anyway, and in doing it, you learn you're capable, right? And you can do a lot more than you gave yourself credit for. And for some people, the medication is that extra little boost that makes those exposures more feasible. But yeah, not without some risk of side effects, as Leanna was saying too. Yeah, awesome. Thanks for sharing, guys. Okay, let me find another question here. Okay, so Ella, you just referenced, support of family. This question references what sort of support do you think that school-based professionals could offer? Like, was there anybody in your school setting that really helped you, or what sort of support do you wish you might have gotten from them if you didn't quite get the way that you were hoping?
Go ahead.
For me, it was helpful, like when the social teacher worker helped me on like brave talking and exposures, and then when my teachers asked for forced question, when my teachers asked for choice questions.
Yeah. And so for those of you, if you're not familiar with that language, a forced choice question is like either or, right? So do you, for recess today, are you thinking you might go on a slide or the swing set or something different, right? I'm going to use a very young child example since you all were so young when you were first diagnosed. But either or formats, right? So it helps to narrow in what the answer might be, makes it a little easier to answer. So forced choice questions and somebody going around with you to like do targeted brave practicing at school. Great. Anybody else? School-based professional support. Anything that school-based folks could do to support a student with selective mutism?
I would say that my second grade teacher was a really good example of someone who really helped me. I think that what's interesting is that she didn't really treat me any differently than any of the other kids. So I think something that was really crucial to me starting to share my voice was that she wouldn't shy out on calling me. So just because I had a hard time, she wouldn't not call me out, So it would be basically she treated me the same way, and it felt like maybe refreshing in a sense. And it didn't she didn't look at me as if I was less capable than any of the other students or that my voice was less important. I think, and generally a lot of my teachers in elementary school, if I ever did raise my hand, they would for sure call on me. So I think that just having teachers treat you as if you are capable and that your voice is just as important. Seeing that when you do want to participate, that they will notice that you actually have something to contribute and they will call on you. I think just kind of that idea was super important. I think that some teachers may get the wrong idea and be like, oh, I don't want to scare her. I don't want to call on her because I don't want to make her uncomfortable. But the reality is it takes this level of discomfort to overcome public speaking. And I think there's something important with building up small steps, So it might start with maybe a restroom signal, oh, I need to go to the restroom. And then it might move to a word. I don't know if anyone else used step ladders, but that was kind of a thing I did when I was in elementary school, where I slowly built up the courage to do things that I was uncomfortable with, which was super helpful. I know I kind of went all over the place there, but that's what I would say.
That was a really awesome answer. One of the questions that's coming in live, I think, is really related to this one. So I'm gonna deviate from my original plan and ask it. Questions here. I think this is specific to the school setting. Did the support that you received in the school come from just teachers, counselors, speech pathologists? Do you know the role of the folks who were on your team? And when
I
you're young
know-
kids, you might not have known. So sorry, Lena, go ahead.
I know I worked with like social workers, and I don't know what I don't know if it was like special needs, like a teacher like that, but I had one of those that also worked with me. And then all my teachers knew. So
I think I had a lot of support from a handful of my teachers. But then also I think I've met with a counselor a little bit, but the majority of my support did come from my mom and my therapist.
I feel like most of my support was my parents, my teachers, and therapist, and like principal. So yeah.
Yeah, lots of folks involved, sounds like. This one I think is an interesting question. How do you handle emotions such as frustration at not being able to speak all day at school, or in other situations where you had things to say but felt like you couldn't get the words out? Any skills or tips that you found to be helpful?
I don't
no,
really
we'll take it.
remember how I would, but I always know, like, I'd always just like ask myself, like, why can't I be like all the other kids? Like, why can't I just like raise my hand? Why can't I talk? So that's what I remember, just like wondering why I couldn't, because I was so young, so I didn't really understand it.
I feel
Yeah.
like, oh, sorry, were you about to say something?
I was just going to say that's totally fair. And that I was going to say there's a similar question, but yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I guess I was going to say, I don't necessarily remember certain ways that I would deal with. I'm trying to think. I think that when I got home, that it was kind of like my release. You know, I was comfortable at home. I could talk to my family. But then also I did start playing guitar around the same age that I did develop selective mutism. So that was a place where I feel like I could put my energy somewhere else where I could express myself. So, you know, I was performing even when I was young. And I think like having something creative that you can do to just kind of like cope or still express yourself was pretty crucial to how difficult it was for me to like speak. And I think even like maybe even acting was easier than speaking. I think a lot of people find that to be true. So I'd say putting your energy to creative out, like creativity out was.
Yeah. I think that's, I would imagine that most of the folks on this call would identify with some of that similar sentiment, right? That they or their family member or their loved one, their student, you know, is a little bit more of a creative person, and having that outlet to build confidence in other ways can be really important. Yeah. I think, Leanna, one of the answers that you gave, I'm going to piggyback off of it. One of the questions that came in too was if you remember any particular worries or fears when you were in a talking situation, and when someone asked you to talk to somebody. I know you shared one a little bit ago, so if there's others that come to mind, any other worries or fears when you were asked to talk to somebody.
I don't know.
I heard comments earlier about like being nervous and people were going to make a big deal about hearing you talk. I thought I remember seeing everybody sort of nodding along, like, yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, I think that was like the biggest thing, because I remember like in elementary school, if kids heard me, they'd make a huge deal out of it. But then again, they didn't know, and we were just kids. But I think that was like the big thing.
Mhm. And Anderson, I think you said you felt like your like mouth was glued together, right? Or it's like stuck,
Yeah.
right?
And like
Yeah.
when we did popcorn reading in class, which is like the teacher or like the student calls on someone and you have to read whatever we're reading. In class, I was really anxious, and my music teacher put me on the spot a lot until my mom did a fade in.
I think for me, it was similar. I just couldn't really get myself to speak. And I don't know if I remember any specific worries. I think it was more just like fear of the attention being on me and fear of like maybe everyone like turning around and looking at me. Or yeah, I just remember like having my mouth feel like I couldn't get the words out. I couldn't say anything. It almost felt like even if I wanted to, that I couldn't in a way. I think, and the worse it got, like the more I was unable to speak, the harder it would be to like get up the courage to just say anything and just kind of build off each other.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. You sort of like get into a worry loop, right? I haven't said anything, and now it's that much harder. People are going to make a bigger deal about hearing me talk because I've never talked in this situation before. Yeah, makes sense. Was there a milestone moment where things seemed to change on your journey with selective mutism? Something
I mean,
important that you did, and then you realized afterwards, oh, I can do some of this stuff now.
I stated like high school,
Mhm.
just like the fresh start. And I know that that's helpful for other kids too. Because I remember like telling myself like in 5th grade, like I'll start talking in middle school, and then I didn't. But I think just a new school, like everyone was starting over. That's what really pushed me and like helped me overcome it.
My milestone was like the day at Brave Buddies when I talked the most and I got the most brave bucks. And then I came home and I could talk to anyone and all my teachers.
Yeah, that's a milestone moment right there. Really sort of light switch time. Yeah.
I think a milestone for me was going to middle school, and in 7th grade, I got like the lead role in a play, and I had to memorize like hundreds of lines, and I had to perform in front of like hundreds of people. So for me, it was like, oh, okay, I can do this, kind of just building up this confidence. And like, I kind of knew in the back of my head that I was capable of getting a role like that, just because like I know that like I enjoy acting, or I know that I can speak or whatever. But I think that that was kind of an eye-opening moment for me to be like, okay, not only can I like perform, but like I'm capable of like putting my worries aside and expressing myself without too much fear. Like I'm able to just jump out there, and I just kind of proved to myself that I could do something
Sort of
great.
like if I can do this really big thing that most people would identify public speaking, performing, acting as, like really anxiety provoking to do that on stage. If I can do that, I can do a lot of things, right? Yeah. Awesome. Okay. Are there any talking situations that you still find to be challenging?
I stated this earlier, just like presentations. So school presentations mainly. Now that I'm older, I guess like job interviews, but I know that's like nerve-wracking for anyone, but probably a little bit more because of what I went through. But I think those are like the only two.
I feel like not really, but some situations like on the first day of school or like a piano recital or something.
I think for me, it was like, I mean, short answer, yes. I think like still public speaking a little bit, and some social interactions. But I think some of it has to do with like my perfectionism. So I think that kind of weaved into my anxiety, and just was like, it weaved into my social anxiety, and it was kind of like afraid of messing up, or afraid of saying the wrong thing, or yeah, I guess that just kind of showed up later as I developed that other worry.
Yeah, this is one of the questions that came in the chat just now, sort of describing that for many folks, selective mutism and social anxiety go hand in hand. And I think everybody on this panel has acknowledged that that's the case for them too. The question here is, do you have the feeling that which one came first, right? Selective mutism came first, or was the social anxiety there and sort of fueling it? It probably is a little tricky because you were all quite young, but if you can recall that time, how do you think that played out for you?
I mean, I definitely think selective mutism came first, since that is a childhood disorder. I mean, they also like thought I had Asperger's, so I do think it was selective mutism. So
I think it was just SM for me.
Fair enough. Okay.
I think it was the same for me, I believe. I think social anxiety came later, when I developed a better sense of the way like we interact and the way people can perceive you when you're speaking. It just came later as I started to develop and become more aware of how people can react to certain situations. So
yeah, a little bit more like aware of what other people might be thinking, or they might be judging, or yeah. Okay. Who helped you the most, and how did they help you?
I would say my mom helped me probably the most, and then my therapist, who I still see today, she like specializes in SM, so I think they helped the most. And I guess like just the school being very understanding of my situation. So
My parents were, because they took me to CMI and trained my teachers and helped me practice brave talking.
I would say my mom was really helpful in that she like didn't let me do anything that I didn't want to do when it came to public speaking. She really pushed me to do things that I was super uncomfortable with, even if I, like just to see like what's the worst case scenario, like nothing bad will happen. And then my therapist also as well. She was very patient with me, and she helped me develop a bunch of different tools.
Yeah, one of the things that I'm hearing sort of across the answers here is, somebody, both being a cheerleader and a coach, right? Saying like, let's do some practices. Yeah, I'm going to help you through this, and also I'm going to help you do this, right? Like there's an accountability piece there too. Does that sound fair? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Wonderful. Okay, let's see. Did you find anything beneficial came from you having had selective mutism?
this took me like a while to I guess answer for like myself, but I think it not really like gave me a purpose in life, but it kind of like led my life. Well, now it's my minor, but I'm a psychology minor and then a criminology major, but I became like a lot more understanding of SM and like other mental disorders. And I became like very passionate about not only SM, but like depression, anxiety, like all those. So I think it just helped me become more understanding and kind of give me somewhat of a future career. So.
Oops, sorry, I was muted. That's really awesome. And I think that if you polled a bunch of folks in the mental health field, I think you would find that most of us have similar sorts of stories, right? Like we go into this field because we know what it's like to feel anxious, or we know what it's like to struggle with some of the same things that we're helping people overcome. So yeah, that's really wonderful. And I think that I would say that a lot of us in the field feel that way.
I learned I could do really hard things and overcome them.
Man, what a great answer. Ella, did you learn anything, or anything beneficial came from having had selective mutism for you?
I think for sure. I think that I developed like similarly like an interest in other mental health issues, and also just became more compassionate around like for people around me. Just like I've definitely become like more like considerate, and well, obviously I hope I've always been, but you know, just definitely more considerate and definitely more caring and thoughtful. And I think that's a big thing. And then also just like a passion to speak up like against things that I see as like wrong. That's just kind of a general thing. And then I would also say that I have also similarly like proven to myself that I am capable, and that my voice is valid, and that I don't need to hide anything about myself, really. I think I developed confidence later on, and I think just not having that confidence at the beginning, but then developing it later has just like made that confidence just like twice as like much, just because I know that I am able to come out of a really difficult place rather than just like, you know, having it my whole entire life. I think that also it's given me this mindset where it's like, if something is thrown at me, then I feel like I almost like, it's been like one of the hardest things, I think, overcoming OCD and then selective mutism has been like literally one of the most difficult things in my life. And I think that now, like when anything else is thrown at me, I feel like I just have that confidence or more courage of like, you know, I've already overcome this. I can pretty much overcome almost anything. Because, you know, if you can overcome something that's within you, that you like deeply, that's deeply rooted in everything you do, then I think when you go out into the world and you do other things, you can really look to that sense of, you can really look to that mindset that you had and see how capable you truly are of, you know, doing anything that you really love to do, or anything really.
Yeah, awesome. This is a sort of a related question. What kept you going when selective mutism treatment felt difficult, whether that was like formal treatment sessions or sort of the work that you invested yourself in outside of your treatment?
I mean, I was so young, so it's kind of hard to really remember, but I think it was just like my therapist would always tell me like how strong-willed I was, and I think that's what just like kept me going. And I know like I like would look at everyone else and want to be like them, so I guess just kind of like not really having like role models, but just wanting to be able to talk and not wanting to give up on that.
Yeah, I had motivation. Like, I got prizes a lot. And also I just wanted to talk to my teachers because everyone else could do it easy. But the prizes mostly.
I love that. So both the internal motivation, right? The social, wanting to be like others, wanting to talk to your friends, to share your ideas in class, but also prizes are awesome too. External stuff is good.
Mine was pretty much just the same, just wanting to have my voice be heard. But just, I think a lot of it was just, I developed like an anger of like, oh, like I really want to be able to share my voice, and all these other people can do it so easily, but I don't see like kind of just anger with myself, which a little bit was okay because it did get me to just like get myself out there a little bit more. And then I think some of it was also people started to think that they could like push me around more easily because I didn't, stand up for myself, or I couldn't share my feelings, or I didn't think that what I was feeling was valid or that I was good enough. So a lot of it was like, okay, I'm going to prove to them that not even, but just, that I am my own person, and that I don't need to just let people push me around as much, I think.
Yeah. So it's a little bit of like righteous anger at like, that's not okay. I have a voice and I'm gonna prove it. Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Is there anything that you found people most misunderstood about you or about selective mutism?
I mean, people thought like I was, I don't know, like physically mute, so I couldn't talk. Or like there were some people who thought I was just like stuck up and didn't want to talk or whatever, but it was mainly like they thought like I physically couldn't talk. And I mean, the anxiety was both mental and physical to the point where like you couldn't even get the words out. So
I'm just gonna echo that. I think a lot of folks feel that way, that they're told that they're being oppositional or rude or any number of things, and don't understand that it's anxiety based. Anderson, were you going to say something too? I saw you unmuted.
People thought I was like doing it on purpose, purposely.
Mm-hmm.
And also they thought I just couldn't talk at all, and it was impossible for me to talk.
Yeah, I bet both of those things were very frustrating. Yeah.
I think similarly, a lot of people like referred to me as just being shy. And I think that really like made me upset, because it wasn't that I didn't want to speak. It was that I wanted to speak, but I couldn't. So I like, even in like first grade, when people would refer to me as shy, it's like, no, I really do have a lot to say. I just don't have the courage right now to say it. And even then I couldn't be like, no, I'm not shy. But I just remember like people referring to me as that, and it just like really made me upset for some reason, just because I knew I had stuff to say. And I feel like just that term was misused. And I think a lack of understanding. I think a lot of people haven't heard of selective mutism. So I think that's also what kind of maybe irritated me, that there was a lack of knowledge on it, and a lot of people like didn't, or maybe disregarded it as a real thing. I think some of my family members, like before they acknowledged that I did have selective mutism, my mom was talking to them about it, and they were like, no, she's fine. She can totally talk. It's probably just like a development thing. Like she'll talk later on. So I think there's like a lack of sometimes like respect or acknowledgement of the of selective mutism, and definitely a lack of understanding of like what it means,
Yeah,
what it looks like, etc.
I'm so glad you said your comment about how much it bothered you to be called shy. As a clinician who treats selective mutism, something I frequently tell the families that I work with, right? Like that's language we should probably try to avoid, because we don't want it to be like a crutch, right? We don't want someone to think, well, I can't talk to that person because I'm shy. But to hear you say like, that really bothered me. I had things to say and I knew I wasn't shy. I think that's really interesting perspective too, that one that I haven't heard. I tell people to avoid that for different reasons, but it's an interesting comment too. Yeah. Okay, let's see. did you ever get any unhelpful advice? Like after you got good treatment, right? After you sort of got a little bit down your path, did you get any advice that you sort of realized in retrospect wasn't very helpful? I wonder, I see you all looking and thinking, I wonder if we would have posed this question to your parents, right? What the answers here might have been, right? That like your parents might have been the ones getting some of that less helpful advice, right? That when you were quite young, you didn't really recognize or see.
I do. So I went through a few therapists before I found like the one that like really helped me. And I know it was like a guy, and I guess he, like his treatment plan was she cannot leave this therapy session until she says a word, which I thought was a little extreme because that was when I was 5. And I know like he'd say like, you know, she might be screaming and crying, but like she cannot leave until like she says a word. So obviously we didn't stay with him, but I feel like that was especially because I was only 5, like maybe if I was older, but I think that's like the only thing that like wasn't helpful.
That feels like it would strike anybody as a particularly helpful approach, even if you're 16 at the time or whatever it is. Yeah. Yikes. Yeah, I'll just sort of reflect too that I think there is this really delicate balance, because I think everybody here has talked about exposure, right? Everyone here has talked about how it was really beneficial to have somebody sort of suggesting, here's this practice. I think this is the next step up for you. And I think you can do this. And I'm here to help you with this. And also, to echo Leanna, your point about like you can't force somebody into it, and you can't hold them hostage in a room until they do it either. So it is a really delicate balance of like encouraging without overwhelming. And maybe that just wasn't the right goal, talking goal for you in that moment at that time, for that to be beneficial. So yeah. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, I was just going to say, I think there's also like a really fine line between, like, for me, distinguishing what is anxiety and what is really real. I think my parents may have had some like issues with that, like at one point where they were pushing me constantly, even though I like actually wasn't having fun, but they were like, you know, you need to continue to do this. It's going to get better, or like, it's just your anxiety or whatever. But then it would turn out like it was actually miserable. So it was like just something I just didn't enjoy doing. So there is a fine line. And even sometimes like I wouldn't be able to recognize it myself. You know, my anxiety was so extreme, like I would get nauseous and I'd be like, I would call my mom and be like, Mom, I'm sick. And she'd be like, no, it's just your anxiety. And then later, like I ended up actually being really sick. So it was like, I just couldn't tell. It was just that extreme. So, you know, and sometimes like if your parents can't figure it out, then, and you can't figure it out, like, I mean, it just shows like how hard it is to decipher, like, what is anxiety? What is actually happening? Yeah. And then also I think all throughout elementary school, I started to like meet with my teacher a week before school started, just so I could develop a relationship before the next year started, just so I'd have maybe a different level of comfort than the other students, so I could feel more supported. But I'm kind of like stuck between like, was that helpful? Because I think a lot of it was helpful, but then it did get to a point where not telling my teachers that I had a disability or a mental disorder, that I felt more like capable. I felt like I had, I don't really know how to explain this. I think you kind of understand what I'm getting at here.
I do. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think that for a lot of, I'm going to try to extrapolate something here. You've told me if I'm wrong, but I think for a lot of very young children, that's a super helpful approach, right? That they are able to meet and develop a relationship and get to a certain extent verbal with this really important person in their school environment. But I also think there's like a window of time, like probably in that adolescent window, where it starts to feel weird, right? That like, I'm getting this like sort of special, I realize now that nobody else is doing this. This feels a little weird to me. Is that what you're saying here? Like,
yeah. And I think
Yeah.
it also, like, not having my teachers know about
Yeah.
that allows me to feel like I don't have eyes watching on me. Like, I feel like I can show them that I'm capable, kind of like a fresh start sense, you know. It makes it feel like I'm not held back by anxiety. It makes it feel like they're not expecting something from me, I guess.
yeah, that's fair. Okay, I'm gonna find another question. Any advice for families who are new to this diagnosis? And I think sort of a related question was sort of similarly, anything that you would say to someone like that was your age when you were diagnosed or when your symptoms were first apparent?
I guess I would say like get into therapy or something, because that was very helpful. And I feel like even though it took me from like age 5-15 to get over it, I feel like because I started so young, it helped me because I was still developing and growing. So I feel like if you notice something, to get help right away, and like it's okay to like be different, and you know. And I feel like even though my childhood was different, like I wouldn't change it. I feel like it really like made the person who I am today. And it was, even though it was, back then I hated it and it was not a fun time, it was very helpful. So yeah.
I'd say probably like try a camp like Brave Buddies, and like small goals, like start with the little goals, but then slowly work your way up. And just the small goals are really like, you feel like you've accomplished a lot, and just imagine what the larger goals would be like.
I think therapy for sure. I think just having really great relationships with friends and family members, and then also just my mom like pushing me, even though like I remember her telling me that it was super difficult for her to see me like cry, sob, like, and it was super uncomfortable, like being in a super uncomfortable position. But ultimately, like, I may have like despised her at that moment of time, but ultimately, like, I am super grateful now that she was able to like look past that, not baby me, just like encourage me, make me do stuff that I really did not want to do, because like ultimately it did make me build grit. And I think that is super important. And then I just think patience and like baby steps, like don't start with something that's over extreme. It could be really discouraging. The like reward system of like, oh, I can do this, build on to the next thing. Oh, okay, I'm capable of something a little bit bigger, just shows. And I think it builds confidence with like what you can see that yourself, that you are capable. And then just that like reassurance of like, I'm capable just helps motivate you to do something even more difficult the next time. So I would say that it is a like slow process, but it is very important to take it slowly and not like start with something that's like way out there, you
Off
know?
the deep end.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm just gonna, for those for attendees, Selective Mutism Association, we do have a list of treating providers. I know everybody here has said seek treatment, right? And hopefully seek treatment with somebody who is knowledgeable about selective mutism, about the right types of treatment approaches that are effective for this. Selective Mutism Association does have a list of providers that you can sort by where they're licensed. So if you're looking for help, that's one great place to peek. And maybe Kristen, if you're able to find that link and post it into the chat, that would be helpful too. And here you are. Wonderful. Thanks, Kristen. Okay, we probably have time for like maybe one more question. I feel like I should have a really poignant one for this last little bit here. And I am not prepared for the final question to be this most poignant moment that I would like. Okay, I'll use this one. If you were to pass on any sort of like pro tip about selective mutism, what would yours be?
I would say, I guess, just to not give up and just to keep pushing yourself, because I mean, there's going to be ups and downs with it, even now after, so I guess like don't get discouraged if one day you can talk in public and the other day you can't. So, and just know that like it takes time, but eventually you will get through it and overcome it.
Awesome tip. Go ahead, Anderson.
What I said last time, like start with small goals and then slowly work your way up. And yeah, don't get discouraged and keep pushing, I guess.
I would say, this is a hard one. I would say that also to not get discouraged, but I would say that also if you do struggle with like anxiety, like just being aware that selective mutism or other forms of anxiety may show up in different ways, but you can like use those same tools. Don't forget the tools you've learned, use them, and you can apply them to different things, because I think that as you get older, a lot of things change and your anxiety may come and go in different forms. I know this is kind of bleeding into like other forms of anxiety, but I would say just like be willing to challenge yourself. Be willing to like just remember those tools you learned and carry them on through any other forms of anxiety that you may have, and any other.
I love that one. Yeah, I love that, because there is like really the way that anxiety is treated, certainly the exposure ladders that we make and the nuances of the skills are different, but there's the same core group of things, right? And to be able to like revisit those, and in the times where things do get more difficult again, or anxiety has taken a slightly different shape, that's a really awesome one to revisit. I'll close just with some of the comments folks have been really in the chat saying how valuable this has been, and they're so grateful for the time, and they find your story so inspiring, and I think all of us here can echo that sentiment. I'm personally super grateful for everybody's time here tonight, being willing to share to what a big exposure this is, right? To be live on a webinar, to know that it's being posted on YouTube, to know that you've got a live audience here today. So thanks for your time, your dedication to ongoing exposure for yourself, and for sharing your stories with this community. I know we've got a lot of folks who are super inspired and hoping to carry your examples into their lives too. So thanks again. I'm just going to really quickly skim down here at the bottom. Yep, lots of comments about your wonderful grit, lots of hope for their children. So thanks again, guys. I will let everybody say a quick goodbye, and then we'll end promptly tonight. So thanks again, everybody.